for the last 2 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Alex Phillips. She's back, of course, tomorrow, right here on Talk. Looking forward to that. Loads to get through this afternoon. So, Britain seems to be tearing itself apart as a new poll reveals that 8 in 10 say the country is divided, half think culture is changing too fast, and pride in Britain has slumped, with culture war fatigue rising. Reform voters are most alarmed, understandably, and the public is crying out for leadership that restores order, pride and common sense. I can't imagine anyone would disagree with that last point. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has jetted over to COP30 in Rio to preach net zero while Britain pays the price. He pledges the UK is all in on green targets as scepticism at home grows. Donald Trump says bring back oil, and the left clings to costly climate dogma for a few hundred jobs. Will we ever get cheap energy back? It's a reasonable point to raise, surely. And the Metropolitan Police face another race row after an internal review alleges built-in racism. Commissioner Mark Rowley rejected institutional racism label but admits systemic change is needed. We'll look at that story as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. It's like a flipping sauna in here. Man, what is going on? You could grow a cactus in the corner. Probably over the course of a show. Lots to get through here. Where has our national pride gone? Let me put the question like that. Where has it gone? It's plummeted. Society more divided than ever in Keir Starmer's Britain. These findings will send a lot. Well, you'd like to think they will send alarm bells to Downing Street. 8 in 10, as I said, say they feel the nation is divided. That's up 5% points from just 2 years ago and 10 points from 2020 when they first looked at this. Half of the public said Britain's culture was changing too fast. That's up from a third to half. So national pride across all age groups has gone through the floor, with less than half saying they were proud of their country. well down on just 5 years ago. What has happened in that 5 years? And this, of course, predates Keir Starmer, it should be said. Across all ages, 86% said they believed there were greater tensions today between immigrants and people born in the UK. That's up from 74% a couple of years ago. And worryingly for the Prime Minister, of course, it's reform voters, many of those in traditional Labour heartlands, who were most worried about the cultural state of our nation. Now, this was a big poll. This was King's College London and pollsters Ipsos. Been tracking UK cultural trends for the last 5 years. They said their latest set of findings are frightening and laid bare an increasingly divided, polarised and downbeat society. Well, if you want to see maybe a little bit of evidence of that, then if you look at the football last night. Now, this wasn't 300,000 mad people protesting. It was a couple of thousand mad people protesting. It was a bit of a counter-protest. There were some arrests, few and far between. But it did rather, to me, I mean, it absolutely hammered home a divided Britain. You look at what some of these people were saying, whether they were MPs, locals, imams, whoever they happen to be. You know, we don't want that football team on our turf. We don't want you coming round here because you're Israeli, you're a bit Jewish. You know, there might be some kind of anti-Semitic thing going on if you didn't know any different. Hey, what a surprise. That was horrendous to see that. And it absolutely, if you see that, and this is an area that's 70% Muslim in this neck of the woods, then I think you would be understandably right to conclude that there have been big changes. Even if you're all right with the changes. I mean, if you could be a lily-livered lefty who goes, yeah, I'm absolutely fine being a minority in my own country. If you're all right with that, look, it's a democracy, you can believe whatever you like, but you couldn't fail to notice the change. And the change is right across the board. Where has it gone? Where has our national pride gone? Where do you point the finger and what is your own experience? 0344 499 1000. Just give us a sense on what you think has happened there. And it's interesting when you consider this weekend that the good and the great at the Cenotaph and the poppies that we're all wearing or buying at the moment, and what that is all about, are war dead. People who, in particularly World War I and World War II, quite literally fought for our country. They fought so that we avoided tyranny, so that we avoided division, so that we avoided authoritarianism, so that we avoided dictatorship, if you like, whatever way you want to, fascism, you know, the list goes on. These people fought so that we wouldn't live life like that. How do those people feel today? Let me just play you this. This is a man called Alec Penstone, a World War II veteran. This man is 100 years old. He fought in World War II along with fellow soldiers. Many didn't return, of course. He did, and he fought for the future of this country. 100 years old. And this is what he had to say this morning about our country today.
What does Remembrance Sunday mean for you? What is your message?
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Wow. The sacrifice was not worth the result of what it is now, what this country is now. I mean, that's so deeply troubling and disturbing. As a young man out there with other guys the same sort of fighting, losing their lives for the dignity and the future of our country, you would imagine that in any other world, all those years on, that somebody like Alec would be telling the very opposite story. Look at where we are today. Look at the amazing place we live in. Look at how together we are. Look at how culturally advanced we are. Look at the cohesion we have in this country. And it's all thanks to people like me and my fellow soldiers that fought during the war. But it wasn't worth it, he says. It wasn't worth it. How flipping sad is that? Where has our national pride gone? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with Reem Ibrahim, Communications Manager at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Reem, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us again.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
All good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it. And the reason why I find this really fascinating is at the IEA where I work, the free market think tank, our founder was a Bastard of Britain pilot. And he watched his brother die, Basil Fisher. His name was Anthony Fisher. He watched his brother die in the Battle of Britain, and part of why he was inspired to found the IEA was because he was so grief-stricken and realised that actually this current state that the country was in, and this was in the early 1950s, was this worth my brother's death? Was this worth my brother dying in the war in order to protect this country? And so he founded the IEA for that reason, to make the principled case for freer markets and to actually say the government is getting in the way. And I think when we look at 2025, the situation in which over the last few years we've seen governments of every single stripe of red or blue, and they have increased public spending, they have made things more difficult for everybody. Now, the national pride element of this, I think, is really fascinating because as you've said, the polling is now showing that less and less people are proud of this country. Yeah. And I suppose the question is, what should they be proud of? I love this country. I love Great Britain, but my God, I cannot bear to see it in decline. And I think that the economics of this is what's most important. But of course, I'm sure many people will be particularly disturbed by demographic changes and the spirit of Britain, the spirit of the nation changing. And I think that that's a really interesting aspect of this. We don't see better levels of integration. You know, the immigration that we do have is often people that aren't working, often people that are claiming huge amounts of taxpayer-funded benefits. And unfortunately, it is very, very difficult for those people to integrate. And, you know, work is really the best way people integrate. So I think from a policy perspective, this is the government's failure. And the government have not just failed on all policy fronts, but it's had a spillover effect on whether or not people actually feel proud to be British.
Yeah, and there's immigration and there's integration, of course, and they're two very different things, and that's the nuance that is often missed here, and I think that's arguably where the problem is. Let's have a listen, Reem, to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick speaking about this.
I think that people are sick of seeing, you know, the Gaza flag being put up, a lamppost, a Pakistan flag. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I went down the road from here in Newark and put up Union flags on lampposts for a couple of hours, and car after car, HGV drivers, van drivers were honking their horns. They were saying, good for you. People want us to feel pride in our country, and in order to do that, you have got to integrate people properly.
That was a Sun exclusive. Robert Jenrick talking to Kate Ferguson, Sun on Sunday political editor. In terms of this report, Reem, 8 in 10 say the nation is divided. I mean, it's not like a little number. You might think 1 in 10 would have that view. 8 in 10 people.
8 in 10 is a huge amount. And I think what's interesting is those 2 out of 10 people very likely are unaware of what it means to actually be British in the first place. So part of the problem, I think, Ian, is integration and the question of how it happens. People seem to think that British culture comes from the government. You know, it comes from the government telling us how we can and cannot behave. And that's not true. Culture comes from people. We are the culture. British culture is British people. And when you have people that have come from different countries and they are effectively creating ghettos, well, the government effectively creates ghettos across the country through taxpayer-funded council housing, and when you have asylum seekers in hotels, it's very, very difficult. Those people are not integrating because integration occurs through work. If you work with British people, if you go to enjoy the economy as you will, if you contribute, then you integrate. And I think this is a really, really important point. I am very pro-immigration. I don't think immigration itself is the problem. I think the government is the problem in that they have created and incentivized the wrong types of immigration. And when immigration does occur, it's almost impossible. I mean, it's practically impossible to integrate. Now, my grandparents came from North Africa in about the 60s, and they were very, very excited to be in Great Britain and very respectful of what British culture was, because they had a desire to be British. And I think one of the best examples of this, Ian, of where this is actually being relatively successful, is the US. America is a country that was built on immigration.
Yeah.
Quite literally, every single person that lives in the country, unless they're Native American, comes from immigrants. And yet the distinct identity of what it means to be American absolutely exists. And my God, no matter if you're left or right or up or down, you have an American flag, and American flags are absolutely everywhere. So to Robert Jenrick's point in those comments of The Sun about whether or not it is that people want British flags or Pakistani flags or Gazan flags, I mean, the real point here is, I don't care what flags you put up, but in other countries where they are proud of their country, their flag is up. The American flag is
100%.
always up. And in Great Britain, I would say, I don't care if somebody wants to put up a Pakistani flag or a Palestinian flag. I don't care.
Yeah.
What I do care about is that we do have British flags up. And by the way, nothing is stopping you. If you live in a home and you have a space where you can put up a flag, do it. And if you don't do it, then don't complain.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, and one story that kind of feeds in, I sense, to what we're talking about, and we did touch on this yesterday, and of course it was the big football match at Villa Park yesterday. 11 people arrested. Riot police were there to sort of separate football fans and Palestinian protesters. Let's have a listen to one video that kind of highlights some of what was going on.
Every match that the barbaric Israeli establishment or their teams are at, we will be at. Takbir! Allahu Akbar!
I mean, what is that? I mean, for goodness sake, Reem, you know, there's people with crowds of people. I don't recognise that as a snapshot of Great Britain. Loads of Palestinian flags shouting Allah Akbar outside Villa Park, getting involved in some the politics of a football match. I mean, this is where you want Keir Starmer to be a bit Trump-like and come out and go, sorry, yeah, we don't do this round here.
I definitely don't want that to be the case, but I do think it is indicative of a failure in this country. I mean, the question I have is, why are people protesting Israelis? I mean, this is the real question here, because you wouldn't expect a British person to be responsible and held responsible for everything that the British government does purely by the fact that they are British. So why do we expect Israeli people or Jewish people to be responsible or be held accountable for the actions of the Israeli government? I think it is a double standard. I think there is a huge element of anti-Semitism. And those people that were protesting Maccabi fans, or indeed protesting Maccabi even existing in the United Kingdom and coming for this match, I would implore those people to really ask themselves and encourage them to ask themselves, why are you holding those people to a standard that you wouldn't hold yourself to? Would you like to be held responsible for everything the British government does? I don't think so. So why do you hold Jewish people to the same standard? Why do you say you are responsible for everything the Israeli government does? And by the way, I think the Israeli government have behaved appallingly. But my God, foreign conflicts has nothing to do with what is happening in the United Kingdom. And this is a football match. It has nothing to do with what is going on over in Gaza, or indeed what the Israeli government have done. This is about football.
Yeah, well, it should have been, and it became about so much more, to the point that it wasn't until this morning I bothered to check out the score of the actual match, because everything was sort of overridden by what was going on outside. Reem, stay with us. More stories still to come. We'll talk about where has national pride gone? You said you might feel you still have it in bucket loads, and if that's the case, great. If not, where do you sense it has disappeared to, and why? 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
One here says Britain is the cultural dustbin of the globe now and has virtually no identity. It's just like a big socialist experiment that has gone wrong and all the people on the left just don't see it. Some of them, it's kind of like a hippie commune, I think. I think that's kind of what happened. You know, there was a certain sort of set of obvious standards and common sense that your parents would bring you up with, and that's sort of gone out the window in this desperate search to appease every single person, group, identity. There's a big issue, identity politics and all that goes with it. It's an extraordinary situation. It's no wonder we've got 8 in 10 people saying they feel the nation is now divided. We've got Reem Ibrahim with us, communications manager at the IEA, looking through the big stories of the day. And here's another one, a beauty coming our way now, Reem. The net zero obsessed Keir Starmer is jet-setting again. This time he's in Rio attending COP30, the climate event that chopped down a rainforest in order to hold the event. Let's have a listen to the post that was made by Keir Starmer this morning on X.
Today is the first day of COP, and the UK is really stepping up here. I'm here as Prime Minister, we've got the Prince of Wales here, and what we're determined to show is that climate change is for real, it impacts all of us. You may remember the flooding in Sussex that we had this year, also the wildfires in Scotland. So it impacts us all, we've got to act, we've got to show leadership. But also it's a huge opportunity. We already have 400,000 jobs in the green economy, green jobs, whether that's energy or elsewhere. There's another 400 to go, and I've been announcing jobs in Great Yarmouth, in Belfast and Manchester here today. So stepping up to the challenge, taking the opportunities.
That's Keir Starmer walking through a forest on the graves of baby sleuths who are dead because they had to chop it down to build a road, Reem. But there he is. He's wedded to the whole thing. He's loving every bit of it. Everything about sloths or no sloths. It's about net zero, right?
I am so angry about this, and I think that many of our listeners will be too. Net zero makes us poorer. And my God, the fact that Sir Keir Starmer is gloating about all of the taxpayer-funded green jobs that he is announcing is just absolutely ludicrous. Yes, climate change is real. Climate change is occurring. However, the only singular way we are going to be able to reduce carbon emissions is through the magic of the free market. I have a mobile phone that means that things are more efficient. It is efficiency in energy, but also quite crucially, abundance in energy. Huge amounts of supply where we're actually able to achieve it, and it will reduce business costs. It will make things so much easier for economic growth to actually occur, which apparently the government care about. Although I think that this all must be a red herring. I mean, net zero is one of the most economically damaging policies that the government have implemented, of course, under the Conservative government when that was implemented in the first place. But all of the green energy subsidies are really, really damaging for climate change. And I'll explain this. Because the government are picking winners and losers in the so-called green energy market by funneling taxpayer-funded subsidies into those particular companies, we don't know who the real winners or losers should be. The way a market works, if a project is economically successful, it will make a profit and it will succeed. In any normal business, that's the case. When the government get involved, that doesn't happen. Those same incentives don't occur. So basically, sham green energy projects are being funded by taxpayers, and some of them may have been successful on their own, some of them won't have, and we don't know which ones they are because the government meddled in the market. I mean, this is really economics 101. If we want to ensure that we are doing everything we can for the environment, then we should just get the government out of the way. Stop flying to Rio on a jet. I mean, honestly, the optics of it is just awful. But practically, policy-wise, net zero makes us poorer. We should just simply abolish the Climate Change Act.
And the one thing that we do, I mean, we do mention it, people like you and I talk about it, but, I mean, this should be front page stuff. The absolute crime scene of hundreds of leaders and their entourage private jetting it across the planet, chopping down a rainforest, quite literally, no tabloid exaggeration or anything there, in order to make a motorway to get their fast limousines onto it, to take them to a newly built hotel constructed especially for this event. To talk about waste, energy and pollution is, I mean, if you wanted to create the argument they are taking the pee, I think you'd be on quite safe territory on that one. It's beyond belief.
It is absolutely beyond belief. And I think you're right, Ian. It really is about the hypocrisy. I've got no problem with celebrities going on their private jets. I don't care. It's their money. They can do what they want with it. But what we have in this particular situation with all of these United Nations sort of high-level-esque conferences is an enormous amount of taxpayer money that's being spent on their travel. Obviously, in retrospect, relatively environmentally damaging travel.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're absolutely right, Ian. The fact that they literally had to pave a road in order for it to occur is enormous. I mean, you can't make this up. It reminds me of the Hunger Games, of like kind of these elites that are going into these conferences and, you know, creating something that is absolutely abysmal, huge amounts of money whilst everybody else suffers. I mean, it really is that kind of level of elitism, and I think that's the best way forward. The best word forward is elitism, where they go around and sit around the table and talk about how they can implement policies that will make their country poorer. Literally make them poorer. If you want to solve climate change, you do everything we can to do it. Government, stay out of the way.
Stay out the way. Good advice, Reem. Love it. And this, an internal review has found that racial harm, the racial harm the Met Police inflicts on black people is institutionally defended. This Sir Mark Rowley, of course, has denied that it was institutionally racist during Baroness Casey's report. This was only a couple of years ago, but it still seems to be the case, according to some. Let's have a listen to what the Met Police chief had to say.
I absolutely accept the diagnosis that Louise Casey comes up with. We have racist, misogynist and homophobes in the organisation, and it's not just about individuals. We have systemic failings, management failings and cultural failings. The reason, and I respect Louise using that term, the reason I don't use it, I think it's a very ambiguous term. Your viewers would have different interpretations of what it means.
I love the way he says, I respect her using that term, but I fundamentally disagree with it, which would suggest means you don't really respect her using that term. But this is a new internal Met review by Dr. Shireen Daniels has found, Reem, that racial harm is institutionally defended within systems, leadership and culture. Anti-black outcomes in policing are not random, she says. What are we making of this?
I just wanted to read a sentence from the report. It said, anti-black outcomes in policing are not random. They have been built in and they have been named again and again by families in grief, frontline officers, unions, activists, whistleblowers, campaigners and formal investigations. And they're saying that nothing has been done about it and that it is institutionally ridden within the police. Look, I think this is one of those particular cases of an internal report that is blowing something way out of proportion and taking these particular circumstances in it. But look, if this report is saying that there is racism within the Met Police, then of course we have to take that at face value and say, okay, well, how can we improve that? The worry and concern I have is that reports like this are often skewed by the sort of bureaucracy and the sort of institutional elements of that. And the reason why I wanted to read that particular quote out is that the people they are naming, campaigners, activists, unions, I mean, all of those people have an incentive to prove that there is racism in the police, because it means that they have a job, right? These people their job is literally to improve welfare. You know what that means. They're paid to sort of create this kind of activism, to campaign, to talk about the importance of ensuring that we are actually identifying racism. And to be clear, racism is abysmal. We see it all the time. It definitely exists. And I think it's disgusting, and we need to ensure that we're stamping it out. And I have seen an increase in it across all sides of the political spectrum. To say it is institutional is a very separate matter.
Yeah, and it kind of does a lot of heavy lifting, that word, doesn't it? I mean, you throw it in there and it sounds like, oh man, I like it.
What does it mean?
The world has just ended institutional. Yeah, and then you step back and go, what does it actually mean, institutional? What the average copper
what
is it?
is institutional racism?
We will get to the bottom of that.
Genuinely, what is it?
Great question. We'll throw that one out as well. Listen, Reem, we hit the clock. Thank you. Great to have you with us as ever. Have a cracking weekend. Reem Ibrahim is the communications manager at the IEA. Thank you to her. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Where has our national pride gone? We're going to be speaking to Paul Embry in a moment. Paul's a great speaker on this. The common sense view of the working man, I'd like to say. He's a writer. He's interestingly a firefighter and a trade unionist. But boy, does he speak some common sense. He's with us next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk. We're asking, where has our national pride gone? So many comments on this. One here from Mick, who says, that was absolutely heartbreaking to see that old soldier with all his medals talking like he did about his fallen comrades and what they went through to end up in a country like this. By the way, people who hate our country the most are white middle-class Brits. There's a lot of that going on, Mick. It's worth having a little reminder here over the because we are talking about national pride and what has happened to national pride. This is the clip we played you a little earlier, and it rather goes to the epicentre of this point. So this is Alec Penstone. He's a World War II veteran. He was speaking on Good Morning Britain today. He and his fellow comrades went out. They fought. Many in their tens of thousands did not return. He did. He's 100 years old. What was he fighting for? To make the country better. How did that work out? We'll have a listen to what he says now.
What does Remembrance Sunday mean for you? What is your message?
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty powerful. It's heartbreaking to hear that. And it comes, of course, on the back of this new poll that has revealed that most people say the country is divided. Cultural change is too fast. Pride in Britain is collapsing, especially among young people. Voters think that the woke agenda has gone too far, with concern over things like trans activism. Culture war fatigue is deepening. Let's get a word on all of this. Paul Embry, writer, trade unionist, and all-round good bloke, is with us. Afternoon to you, Paul.
Hi, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, it is an interesting one, isn't it? You know, pride in your country, being proud of where you're from, etc., whether it's about your history, our institutions as they are today. But it seems it's dwindling at a rapid rate, Paul. What's going wrong?
I think you're right. It is that sense of belonging is a fundamental human instinct, isn't it? But I think that it's undeniable, Ian, that there are millions of people in the country at the moment who feel alienated, not from the country itself. I think they still feel that innate sense of patriotism.
Yeah.
But they feel alienated from the people who have been running the country for a long time, and the worldview, the ideology of the people who have been running the country for a long time. And I think what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 decades is what I would term massive progressive overreach. We have got our political parties and our institutions, our public institutions, corporate institutions, educational institutions, and so on, that have all kind of embraced this radical progressive agenda, which is a worldview which is held only by a relatively small number among the elite, whereas the average citizen, the vast majority of them, have got no truck with it. And I think that has created a chasm between ordinary people and the people running it. And it's no wonder that that's playing out in a loss of national pride.
Yeah, and I suppose we've sort of become splintered, and, you know, multiculturalism is an interesting phrase, isn't it? Because all that does is identify lots of different cultures live here. The area, I suppose, the hub of all of this is to get to a kind of common hymn sheet. And that's where it seems to be a bit lacking. There is a sort of sense that governments over the years, in their quest to try and almost appease everything, anyone and everything, have resisted a cohesive sort of agenda in favour of this rather splintered approach, which has perhaps created responses such as this.
Well, I'm a believer in what some people term soft multiculturalism, which is an acceptance that people should be free in a free society.
100%.
To be at liberty, to follow the religion of their choice, to wear the clothes of their choice, to eat the food of their choice, even in their own private home, to speak the language of their choice, of course. But we haven't done that in this country. What we've done is promoted what people term hard multiculturalism, which is, if you like, the active promotion of separateness and difference, actively saying to people, look, you are different. And not only are you different, you should celebrate the fact that you are different. Now, for me, actually, that militates against any sense of integration or assimilation, because you're essentially saying to people, look, your identity is so important that there's no obligation on you to integrate. Your culture is just as valid as everybody else's, and actually we're going to celebrate and promote the fact that you are separate and different to us. And of course, what that has done has just created a huge amount of fragmentation and division within the country. I just think that, you know, any country that wants to be at ease with itself needs to accept that there is usually a dominant majority culture. Look at a country like Japan, very civilized, forward-thinking, law-abiding, democratic country, doesn't promote hard multiculturalism, defends its own culture, but is welcoming to and tolerant to newcomers. That's something that we should have done in this country.
Yeah.
We went to the other extreme and we're paying a big price for it.
And then to compound it, Paul, we have this sort of other curious agenda where, and the obvious example is, you've got politicians that are willing to go on national TV who think that a woman can have a penis. And I'm not saying that just to be mischievous, but I mean, it's things like that that have, well, of course you can, again, you touched on it. I don't want to be nasty to anybody. I want to respect all people's rights. If somebody wants to call themselves Jim and they used to be Jean, I don't care, to be honest. That's up to them. I want to be decent to everyone. But simultaneously, we have to also have there's a certain reality on things, and denying those realities in many respects, and this is just a very contemporary and live issue over sort of gender stuff, kind of also feeds into that we've lost our way, I suppose.
Well, I think, and you touched on an example there, and I share your view on that. But I think more widely, there is a perception among millions of people in this country that what you might call age-old social and cultural norms are changing at a pretty breakneck speed.
Yeah.
And in a way which is making people feel uncomfortable, making them feel violated, undermining their sense of place and belonging, and in a way also that kind of makes them unfamiliar with the country that they grew up in. And you hear it quite often these days. People say, this isn't my country anymore. I don't really recognize it anymore. Now, I guess throughout history, people have probably always said that to a certain extent. But at the moment, I think they are justified because I think some of those changes are pretty fundamental. I think if you look at, particularly since the turn of this century, and the advent of when the new global market and globalization really started to take hold, you started to see serious economic and social and cultural disruption, particularly in working class communities. And that, I think, is when the sense of violation kicks in. And you can't continue to tell people to suck it up, that, cosmopolitan liberalism is good for you and it's enriching culturally and spiritually and financially, when actually they cannot see it in their day-to-day lives. So I'm not surprised at all. I've been writing about this for a long time, as you know, Ian. I'm not surprised at all that the country has found itself where it is with the kind of polarisation that we see at the moment.
Yeah, and I suppose, for some people, they would look at what happened at Villa Park yesterday as a sort of an example of that. Look, notwithstanding all the usual caveats I'll put in here, you can be ferociously angry with Israel and their approach to what has happened in the Middle East. You can wear more than one hat on this. But there is something, visually quite weird to many people, perhaps more so to older generations or our generation and above, maybe more than the ones below, I don't know, where you kind of see a group of mostly men shouting very, very loudly, shouting religious slogans from another place, as many would see it, with flags from another country, looking to me remarkably out of place in the UK. This is in Birmingham, place used to knock out good football and chocolate, and you look at that and think, wow, no one could say there's not a change going on when you look at a scene like that. Not to be judgmental of an individual, but yeah, that's a strange set of optics going on right there, Paul.
Well, it is in black and white, the rise of communal sectarianism on our streets, and it is actually something I think that is quite new to many people in this country, particularly some of the older generations. It's the result, frankly, of very large-scale and uncontrolled immigration and the promotion of hard multiculturalism. And my theory, and to a certain degree, is we're seeing these kind of regional and ethnic and religious divisions now being played out in Britain on our streets in a way that we haven't experienced before. And we could end up in a situation, what I've called the soft Lebanonization. We could become a bit like Lebanon in the sense that in the end, we become so different and distinct from each other and so many different identity groups with their different interests and competing interests that actually that ends up being reflected within our political processes and within our national institutions. And I think that will be an extremely sad day if we do become formally divided like that, if you like, in an official sense.
Yeah.
But again, not surprising, because that's exactly where we've been heading with public policy over the last 30 years, I think.
100%. Paul, great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Paul Embry, writer, trade unionist. We're in a kind of really strange place, and I don't think a country should be, and I'm not saying it's not tricky to kind of, like, you know, harmonise and sort of appease everyone. Nobody wants to be mean to anyone. Everyone wants to welcome someone. You know, the planet Earth is a small old place, and as I always seem to say, at this point in the 21st century, or even sort of the latter part of the 20th century, people are going to move around. You're going to have people on the mooch between countries. As air travel and the digital world takes hold, getting between A and B is no longer something that's a distant dream. It's very easy to do. So I understand that, but notwithstanding all of that, I don't think a country should apologise for saying, right, we are the United Kingdom. This is the dominant faith in the country, and that's the one we go by. You can have your others. There's nothing wrong with that. Whether you happen to be a Hindu, whether you happen to be a Muslim, a Jew, whatever, you can have all of that. Can all still happen, but we're going to keep things in check to make sure we retain a certain status quo. I don't know why, and countries will work better that way. If that is your belief, I don't think you have to apologise for having that belief. Let's talk to David in London on this Pride of Britain issue. David, what have you got for us? Hello.
Hi, Ian. Thanks a lot. Ian, our leaders are working for themselves, not for us. Look at Keir Starmer, Miliband and Sadiq Khan tuxedoing it up in Brazil for an ideology. Our landscape is also being ruined by these wind turbines and solar panels. And look at the way people are being labelled now as criminals for using their cars when they bought those cars in good faith. You see, they can't be trusted anymore,
yeah.
Ian.
So I mean, we've certainly absolutely lost faith in not just Keir Starmer, but in politicians, right?
Look at the massive salaries. I mean, that they're earning.
Yeah.
And never mind all of the supervisors and people, managers underneath them, but all of them are going to be earning huge amounts of money. You know, they should be working us, but it's the other opposite way around now. And the way, Ian, people have been, as I say, they bought their cars in good faith, and now they can't drive anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I can hear the exasperation in your voice, Devin. It rather does feed into that sense of, you know, we're as mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, and we're pulling our hair out and scratching our heads and all those other kind of metaphors and similes that exist around these kind of subjects. It's a very real position. It's a real feeling as well. David, thank you for starting us off on this. One here says, the gentleman that was the old soldier that we played the little clip of, Alec Penstone, the 100-year-old veteran, talking at the minute about people not recognising their country anymore. It's not their country anymore. I'm 60 years old and I hear people my age saying, I'm quite looking forward to when I pass away because I won't be around to see the big change. How sad is that? How do you look after social cohesion? How do you guarantee or protect that hymn sheet, that common hymn sheet that we all sing from, where we haven't got kind of third world sympathisers marching in the streets, speaking in foreign tongue with foreign flags outside an English football stadium? I mean, what do you do with that? Again, that phrase, notwithstanding the fact that people have a right to their own opinions, we're not a dictatorship, I get that. But there is a point when you call that out and go, that's just a bit bizarre. That's where I want a Prime Minister to stand up and be a bit like Trump. Disagree with Trump all you like, but on that point, you imagine what he would be saying if he was looking at those scenes. 0344 499 1000. Where has our national pride gone? Our lines are open. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Jim says, did you notice that Keir Starmer was using a lot of hand movements in that video? Do you think Tony Blair told him that's what you need to do to try and look impressive? He was very army, wasn't he, in that? I noticed that. Michael in Norfolk. Ian, I believe the government regards national pride as a far-right view. Also, many of these green jobs are based in Europe as well. Yeah, that's true. Many of these green jobs are also jobs already. I mean, the idea that nearly 500,000 jobs are going to be created, was it 400,000 jobs? I'm struggling with that. Genuinely, instinctively, I'm struggling with that. Lenny is in Ashford, a very proud Englishman, Lenny. I would assume you were. What's happened to our national pride, Len?
Well, my grandson asked me his advice on joining the army.
Mm-hmm.
And I said no. Now, I put Starmer in the same category as Blair. They're like two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
I said, and for the prime ministers we have today, you're only a pawn. And they've got no concern of your life whatsoever. You are valueless to them. You're only a pawn for their place on the world stage. I said, and I truly believe that in today's thing, Starmer is only interested in his own ego, and he would sacrifice as many soldiers. He's got no conscience to achieve what.
Do you think he would do that? Because some might say Starmer is the kind of bloke that would be more of a kind of what was the phrase if you didn't go to war, if you decided you didn't want to go. But he would be one of those. He'd be on that side of things. The phrase has escaped me.
Well, I studied mentality, because I love debating. You know that, Ian.
Yep.
And the best way to debate with anyone is weigh up the mentality who you're dealing with. And with Starmer, his mentality in life is Starmer. He is priority, and everybody else comes second.
So it's so these guys. I mean, and of course, they're on massive ego trips, and Starmer is no different. He hasn't come to the job with a kind of solid ideology of change or a necessity to improve. He's come to the job because he wanted the job as Prime Minister, which is, as many people have said before me, should be the very reason that should disqualify you from the job. The idea that you desire it and want it should be the very reason why you don't get it. Lenny, thank you very much indeed for that. Ian's in Bridgend. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Hello, yeah. I think the phrase you were looking for was conscientious objector.
It came to me as you spoke. Yeah, conscientious objector, that's the one.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it goes back, maybe after the Second World War, we lost the empire. Well, we won the war at the cost of losing the empire and having to pay through the nose. Then back to America, we were the only allied nation that had to pay them back. Plus, as well, I think during the Second World War, there was a great coming together of all classes and all creeds for a common goal, wasn't there? And I think we've lost that now over the years. We talk about outside of the M25 opinions greatly varied.
Yeah.
I think the ruling class has definitely become more detached from us.
And it's gone across Conservative and Labour as well, hasn't it?
Definitely.
This is not just, I know it's great fun to have a pop at Keir Starmer, but this predates Starmer.
Exactly. I think that was the greatest betrayal because so much trust was put in the Labour Party after the Second World War, and working people stuck behind them. But they are the very epitome of the way that the ruling class has turned their back on the people of this country.
Yeah. Do you still have a sense of pride, Ian, when you think about...
I do, definitely, as a Welshman and as a Briton.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes. And, I recognise the strength of the English state, the English culture, as well as the Welsh and the Christian culture.
And there is when you put it like that, it's brilliant. You know, whether you're Scottish, whether you're Welsh, English, whatever. The kind of common, there's a commonality there, as well as enjoying our own identities, and that's how it should be. That's an example of multiculturalism right there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we in Wales, we refer to England as Lloegr. We still call it Lloegr, and that means the lost lands.
Right, that's interesting. I thought you were going to say something else then, but that was glad to hear it.
We were all part of the one unit.
Indeed, absolutely, bang on. Ian, I've got to move. You've been great, thank you. Ian in Bridgend. Lots more comments still to come. If your message is 87222, or you can voice note or give us a bell 0344 499 1000. News coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Tell you what, there's an awful lot going on. 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Britain seems to be tearing itself apart as a new poll reveals that 8 in 10 has well and truly slumped, with culture war fatigue rising, and reform voters are the group that are most alarmed. The public, it seems, crying out for leadership that restores some sort of order, pride, and that phrase again, common sense. That's the bit we've lost. Where has our national pride gone? Where's it disappeared to? Thoughts on that? Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has jetted over to COP30 in Rio to preach net zero while Britain pays the price. He pledges the UK is, quote, all in on the green targets as scepticism grows back home. Trump says bring back oil, and the left clings to costly climate dogma for a few hundred jobs, they say. Will we ever get cheap energy back, by the way? We're crossing live to Rio in just a couple of moments. And the Met Police faces another race row as an internal review alleges built-in racism. Commissioner Mark Rowley, of course, previously rejected institutional racism, but admits systemic change is needed. We'll look at that story too. 0344 499 1000. You leave us a voice note there as well. Call us on that number or message 87222. Start your message with the word talk. So COP30 is getting underway. I think it officially starts on Monday, but they've all the good and the great, all the lovely leaders roostering themselves, preening their virtuous environmental whiskers as they all gather together for the big powwow of COP30. Yesterday we heard from Keir Starmer, where he mentioned the UK is all in for net zero, but it seems he's also admitted that the consensus is gone on climate change and that cross-party unity on science that is unequivocal, how it used to be apparently, has now splintered both in Britain and globally. We'll talk to Chris Morrison in a moment, environmental editor at the Daily Sceptic. But first, Jessica Woodlock is a reporter who's there at COP30 in Rio, where I'm sure the weather is far nicer than it is back here. Nice to have you with us, Jessica. I mean, just firstly, give us a little backdrop of what you're seeing there and what it's feeling like to be there amongst the good and the great.
Well, Ian, as you'd know yourself, these things are often some sort of disorganised or organised chaos. But yesterday and this morning, it's very much led towards that chaos. Places are still being built around us here. There's ladders around the place. There's quite literally people in hard hats and high vis. So you very much get the sense that Brazil is still trying to catch up with itself here. Throughout the day yesterday, there was a series of kind of unfortunate events. The televisions and the media centres and streaming rooms weren't working. The food hall wasn't open. And actually at one point, Ian, water in the building stopped. And that wasn't just limited to, the common area for us. It was for that so-called VIP room. Those dignitaries and officials, including the likes of Prince William, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, so they actually would have had no access to bathrooms or to even to wash their hands for some time. So it certainly got off to a chaotic start here. It's early of day two, so obviously we're hoping things go a bit better today, but chaos is the name of the game.
That is just, this is straight out of a sitcom, right? So you've got our own Prime Minister and others and leaders and of course their entourages. They're all a bit stinky today. Is that one way to discuss? Nobody can have a flipping wash.
Well, I'm sure Prince William might have been looked after.
Oh, he's there as well. I forgot about Prince William.
Yeah, they definitely would have been working on those issues overnight. But definitely, as you mentioned, COP30 starts on Monday. But this is the UN Climate Summit. This is the only time the world leaders and heads of state will be coming. And 57 of them were welcomed here to Belém City Park yesterday, including UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and he warned all those officials that I mentioned that goal of ensuring that global heating gets no more than 1.5 degrees higher. He said that was virtually impossible, and he said that was a moral failure of those leaders. How he was really impacted by meeting with people who were affected by Storm Dara at the time and the havoc that it caused to the people that he met with. Keir Starmer, as you mentioned, really hammered that idea home of net zero, and he said the words Britain is all in, and that was kind of a direct dig. As you mentioned, that those climate skeptics, US President Donald Trump is not here. Others, India, China, are not here today. And that was another point Keir Starmer mentioned, that collective effort was the real concern raised here yesterday, that was weakening. And the fact that only 57 heads of state here are here, Ian, is further proof of that. That's the lowest number in years and significantly less than last year and less than half than 2 years ago as well.
Wow. So there's a lot to, I mean, there's a lot there to debate, of course, in terms of, you know, these are the good and the great of the global elite of leaders and presidents and prime ministers, all the rest of it. They're literally hoping they're going to change the weather, which some people sort of scratch their head a little bit on that and think, well, I'm not quite sure you can do that. But they're hell-bent on making sure that their green credentials are there for all to see. And yet it can't be lost, surely, even on some of the people attending, that they essentially had to cut down a rainforest in order to build the place that it's taking place in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ian, because it's a point not a lot of people are aware of. There's obviously huge logistical difficulties to get here, and that's really seen poorer nations locked out. So the situation we have is there's some leaders like Trump choosing not to come, but actually others who've been priced out of coming here due to the logistical difficulties, due to the accommodation shortages. And that point you mentioned, quite literally parts of the Amazon rainforest were cut down to make way for a road. Now, it's a lovely road. I drove on it myself from the airport. It's quite literally has a fresh coat of paint on it. But the fact of the matter is they did cut down parts of the Amazon to make way for this global conference on climate. So, you know, that kind of speaks for itself, and it really doesn't lend itself to the criticism that COP gets of being a talking shop.
And this, officially it gets going on Monday, is that right? I mean, they're all gathering. I'm sure there's a few fringe meetings and maybe a bit of vino has been partaken at this stage. But broadly speaking, the official opening of COP30 is Monday. Is that, am I right in saying that, Jessica?
Yeah, you are. And this is actually the first time that this UN climate summit has taken place before the official opening of COP. And that's just because of the reasons I just spoke about. They were trying to get some of the pressure off the accommodation struggles in the city and the traffic struggles as well. So it'll start on Monday, and then we've 3 weeks. The political week, and where the work really gets done, will be week 2. But often, Ian, these run over time. And yesterday's schedules, even on the opening day, ran over time by 2-3 hours. So it's likely that when the deals are done, we'll be well past those 3 weeks, probably into 3.5 when we see results on the table.
It's going to be interesting watching leaders giving speeches in hard hats and high-vis jackets as the work carries on around them. Jessica, enjoy your time there. It's going to be enlightening. Thank you for speaking with us. That's Jessica Woodlock, journalist at COP30 in Rio. And that's a little revelation. The thing has hardly been built. They had no water. They couldn't have a shower yesterday. What a stinky old bunch we've got over there at the moment. The extraordinary thing is, of course, is that Keir Starmer comes back from Rio today. He only went there yesterday, day before, something like that. He comes back today before it really gets going. Because, of course, you know, we have Remembrance Sunday and all the rest of it. I'm glad he is coming back for that. But, again, if you want to talk about air miles and environmental issues, then I don't think he's the best example. Chris Morrison is the environment editor at The Daily Sceptic. Always good to gauge your views. Chris, I don't know whether that was a new bit of news for you as well, that we've just learned that this thing is, well, they're still building the place.
No, I've been writing quite a lot about the construction that's needed to go on. There was only 18,000 hotel rooms in Belém. So what they did was that it's an industrial town, and there were all these love motels on the outskirts where you could apparently discuss your business by the hour. And they ripped out all of the apparently dance poles, the leopard skin decor, and the heart-shaped beds. There were thousands of these rooms apparently, and they made them into diplomatic suites where they're now charging $1,000 a night, presumably with the ceiling mirrors.
That's twice what they used to charge in his previous role.
Thrown in at no extra charge. So I mean, they've had to do quite a lot of building, and I'm not surprised that it's not. I'm not there. I don't fancy staying in some out of town motel, but I'm not there primarily because I don't believe in intruding on private grief.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a clown show. Nobody's turned up. Jessica informed us that 57 heads of state have turned up. Only 5 representatives from the G20. In other words, the people with all the dosh.
There's no China, there's no United States, which kind of pretty much dissipates the entire event, doesn't it?
Yes, it does rather. Well, there'll be lots of people from all these Pacific islands that keep saying their islands are disappearing, even though geographers point out that actually most of them are increasing in size. The Maldives, which has got, which which apparently 20 years ago was going to fall beneath the waves. With, there's more resorts there. There's 12 airports there now, apparently. So there'll be lots of people there seeking money because, of course, the rule at COP is that someone always gets screwed, if you like, and usually it's the British taxpayer because we're the only ones with any money. I mean, to be serious, what's happened, of course, is Starmer is quite right. The whole consensus around both net zero, the net hard left fantasy that you can do without hydrocarbons, the ridiculous idea that you can settle climate science and you're not allowed to debate the effect of a gas in the atmosphere, all of this has fallen away, and you're starting to see the collapse of the whole agenda. Yeah. I was intrigued to see that, say, Prince William was talking about they go in there with all the usual tipping point nonsense and all the extreme weather. Prince William actually turned around and said that the Arctic ice was declining. Even The Guardian last August accepted that there's been no significant decline in the Arctic ice since, wait for it, 2005. Oh. This is a scare they've been using for years and years. Then he talks about going to some place in Pontypridd, where I looked it up. There was a very unfortunate flood. It was a storm Darren, I think it was, which is a typical Atlantic storm we get in the UK. Weather off the North Atlantic hits warm weather in this country, and it dumps a lot of rain. And yes, 200 people homes were flooded. It was not very nice. But to lay that on somehow humans eating hamburgers and driving SUVs is just ridiculous.
Well, Starmer said, Chris, that we're all in. Now, I don't know what he meant by that, because as far as I understood it, by Labour's own metrics and the Conservatives to some degree, they were already all in, I thought. So what does he mean now? Is he doubling down? Is there a new version of all in? Is something else going on?
Yeah, they're doubling down. We are, it was recently said, and I completely agree, we are one of only two countries, the canary in the mine, for the net zero mine. We're the ones who are going absolutely hell for leather with all this nonsense. And we sit there and we listen to Starmer and we listen to Miliband with all their fibs and fantasies about how there's going to be all these green jobs and energy is going to come down and we won't rely on foreign dictators and all this nonsense they come up with. And in the meantime, we're deindustrializing. We have some of the highest energy prices in the world, and we're backing it up with science that doesn't add up to a row of beans. So there is a huge doubling down, and the reason, of course, is that it's a political project. It's nothing to do with the environment. I mean, they don't care. They'll chop down the Ecuadorian rainforest, for instance, get all the balsa wood for the wind turbines. They'll dig up the Indonesian rainforest for the nickel to put into their high-range batteries. They don't care really about the environment. It's not really about that. It's about a political agenda, which, of course, is the command and control. When you control hydrocarbons, when you control energy, you control society, and that's why the people who are there are the people who look upon net zero as their sort of fantasy hard left agenda. So,
and yes, it's a kind of you've gone right for the bullseye in that ideology, haven't you? You've gone for the kind of God card almost, that if we don't do this, we're all going to die. So this isn't about, which is why people can lay in the road and glue their buttocks to the motorway and say, oh, actually, no, you're late for work. Who cares? I'm saving the planet. They've taken, it's the ultimate socialist slogan almost. You have to have an enemy, and what greater enemy than we're killing planet Earth?
I mean, they've been saying it for so long now that they've been crying wolf. Prince of Wales's father, Prince Charles, said in 2009 that we're 96 months away from climate collapse. We had all the ice, the Al Gore saying the ice will be gone, we'll be holding swimming galas at the North Pole. They've been saying this 20, 30 years ago, and nothing comes about it. There was a huge, great tipping point report that was designed to induce mass climate psychosis ahead of COP, was talking about how corals have actually reached their thermal tipping point, which they say is a warming of 1.2 centigrade. This despite the fact that the Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef on the Earth, is at its fourth highest recorded growth since records began, and the fact that corals for hundreds of millions of years have existed between 24 and 32 centigrade. In fact, they actually grow quicker nearer the equator, and yet and yet they still come up with this nonsense, and they must think we are idiots. And as they don't get me finally started on extreme weather, the idea that they can attribute single event weather to individual actions from humans is just an insult. It's an insult to the intelligence. It's pure computer model codswallop. It's garbage in, gospel out, if you like.
Well, we will watch with interest. I won't take it seriously until I see a picture of Keir Starmer with a green anaconda and some kind of poison dart frog on his shoulder. We will watch and see how that pans out for the next 24 hours, because he's coming back very soon. Chris, thank you for your time as ever. Environment editor at The Daily Sceptic with us on the programme. Your thoughts on this large powwow, and I think one of the crucial takeaway lines from all of this, and remember, just never lose sight of what this is meant to be about. The end of planet Earth as we know it. And that's the animals as well. I talked about the sloths, and there are jaguars there, the otters and the eagles, the dolphins and the aforementioned poison frogs. There's all sorts going on out there. They'll all be gone. Most of them are dead in that neck of the woods because they cut down their habitat to build a motorway to service the leaders who are attending. So there's all of that going on. But the biggest leaders, of course, are China and the United States, are not even represented at a conference that is purporting to highlight and try and solve that tricky issue of planet Earth finishing as we know it. China and America, not that, you can't make this up. What is going on? What is your assessment? 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 23 minutes after 2 o'clock. Let's go to Matthew in Newport. On COP30, are you over there at the moment, Matthew? Gone to sort the world out?
I'm not, but my toilet is working and my water's working fine.
See, there you go. You had the last laugh, really, didn't you?
Yeah. I think. Let me lay my stall out. I believe there's climate change. I believe that whatever we do in this country is going to have no real impact. I don't think we should cut our nose off to spite our face. All these things. So I think I'm pretty balanced. But I rang you before about how can you trust someone. I said about Nigel Farage, who said they were eating swans. And I did mention that the average age of the reading age of the population was 9 to 13. And it wasn't a pub talk. It was true, by the way. I looked it up. Anyway, how can you trust people when they come on and they're from the Daily Skeptic and they repeat the mantra that there's been no significant change in the ice shelves, the sea ice, since 2004, when scientists know that, but it is classed as a temporary pause. It's been declining since records began, the satellite records, since 1979, and the overall curve is still downward. And they're thinking, future predictions, that the temporary slowdown will be likely followed by a period of faster than average ice loss. Now, that is a complete misrepresentation of the facts. If you look at the graph, it's obviously got a sort of, you know how graphs form a solid line through the centre of many points of information?
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, the downward curve is still downward. This is why I distrust people who come on and talk against climate change, manipulating the data for their own advantage.
What about, and data manipulation, of course, does work across the board. We all know that. And I think the sense, though, and I hope this is reasonable, Matthew, is that there's an alarmism going on that is uncalled for, because there's nothing wrong with looking after the planet. But when you start banging on about a flood in Wales, you know, when they've had a flood in Wales every year for about 2,000 years, you kind of lose the argument around perhaps the more important stuff.
You do, I agree, and there are many factors that you can use against it. So the rivers aren't being dredged as well; they should be. They're not being cleaned. But then again, I use that argument because I'm in a flood area. Well, not a flood area, which is the river rises, and we keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
But Wales and the rainfall has increased over the years. We are getting wetter. So that the point is, it's a combination of these things where you've got poor management of the waterways plus the increase in rain that's leading to more common events. Once in 100-year events are becoming once in 10 years. And if you were to say to someone in 1979, do you know there will be a 40% loss in the sea ice coverage since then in the year 2025? You go, I don't believe that. It's falling about 12% every decade. Now, the thing is, you get a bloke on as your, what do you call them? Your representative of a sceptical outlook on life and things, and it is misinformation, and it's disingenuous, and it gets my goat.
Why does he then believe passionately and write passionately? I mean, you might cynically go, well, there's a money to be earned in that. But I don't disbelieve that he believes what he was saying. And he's not stupid. So how would you challenge that to him?
He's in the business of the anti-party. He's going against... It's so easy to go, no war, because, you're a group of people who can shout it. The actual movement, if you were to look at the volume of scientific evidence from all things, from geology, meteorology, anything you want to look at, it all trends towards climate change and the massive rise in CO2. And people go, CO2, it's the gas of life. CO2 can kill you. It's as simple as that.
Too much of it, yeah.
Yeah, you have CO2 monitors in schools, and it's only about...
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Talk 2523. Let's have a look at this story we mentioned a little earlier. The internal review led by Dr. Shireen Daniels has revealed that racism is, quote, inevitable and defended in the Met Police. And of course we know that previously Mark Rowley had rejected the term institutional racism. He has admitted systemic change is needed. Does racism exist in our police forces, and if so, is it in any greater numbers than anywhere else that it might exist in society? I think you could reasonably say, well, you know, the police should by definition be held to a slightly higher level than anywhere else. They are, after all, the police. Let's speak to Nusrit Mehtab, who is a former superintendent in the Met. Nusrit, good afternoon to you. I mean, we've been in this territory before. We've had Macpherson, we've had the Casey report, now we have this. What's your overarching assessment? I mean, is the Met a cesspit of racism where people are walking around in the staff canteen in white hoods? Or is it that there are still areas that have yet to be kind of identified or dealt with?
Okay, well, this internal review that was carried out in July, and it's important to remember that. There's no radical revelation, I would say, that it shows. What it does show is that actually the institution itself is systemically racist. It's, I think the term that she used, it was hardwired for racism. And this is about anti-black racism. So we've gone broader. Now, back to your point, you know, are there people running around with white hoods? Is it that bad? No. Because this isn't about individuals. This is about the system. This is about the institution. This is about the systems and how they manifest themselves. So, for example, the HR system, how does that work against black people? How is it anti-black racism in there? The promotion process, and those are all hardwired to act against black people. And so when we talk about institutions...
How is that? I mean, it's very easy to say that, but... And you have experience of the police, I don't in that sense, but what I do have experience of is how institutions tend to function these days, where HR departments and all those areas are crammed full of people who are very much the antitheses of racism. So where is it going wrong? I mean, is literally somebody looking at a sheet and they see a name on there that doesn't sound English, and this person's applying for a sergeant position from constable, and they go, well, let's not put him through because, you know, his name suggests he's of Nigerian origin or of Indian origin or something.
Well, it's a little bit more, it's about behaviours, assumptions and norms. So when you go for promotion, and that's been documented and highlighted, Casey looked at it as well, Baroness Casey in her review 2 years ago, when she said it wasn't based on fairness, or it was just based on who you know. So it's things like that. It's about the fit. If you don't fit into the organisation, and the assumption and the behaviours and the norms are that if you're black, you don't fit. So therefore, that you will be excluded. So it's about the way that the whole system acts against a particular person. So yes, part of it could be...
So it's an old boys network, is that a better way to put it? Because wouldn't women also be in this category of people who don't fit, proportionately
Yes,
speaking?
I mean, absolutely. But this review, and you're absolutely right, because racism is bigger, there's misogyny, there's gender, we know all that. This review is particularly focused on anti-black racism. And so it's saying, yes, there is racism, which in itself is bad enough, and all the represented groups get affected. But this is about a particular group, the anti-black racism, which she says is baked into the systems and the processes. So no, it's not that every officer is racist, because that's wrong.
OK, but that would suggest, I mean, maybe there's some nuance in the language here, Nusrit, I don't know, but it sounds more like, I mean, if we talk about the old boys network, for want of a better phrase, if it is in that ballpark, that might not be desirable or right. But there's a big difference between it being anti-black racism and an old boys network, because lots of people, you know, it's a bit like when they used to talk about how boards of directors were all male and white. But actually, there's some caveats in that, because none of them were working class either. So it wasn't about an anti-female thing, it was a pro-elite thing.
Yeah, but I think this is broader than that. This is not just about a group of people getting together and thinking, well, you know, we want to keep that group out. This is about how the mechanisms work, how, you know, when you start, for example, misconduct is again widely documented. The way that misconduct works in policing is that, and this is factual, 81%, if you're black, you're 81% more likely, simply because of the colour of your skin and the assumptions that go with it, in terms of you're not trustworthy, you're a troublemaker, you know, there's something not right about you, you're going to be put into the misconduct system to get a sanction compared to a white colleague. The assumptions and behaviours around white colleagues would be different. So, you know, it'll be like, well, actually, you're not trustworthy simply because of the fact you're black. So it's about mind.
But that would require then for that to kind of hold the very dramatic and worrying headline that it gives. That would suggest there are individuals. I mean, you talk about systems rather than individuals, but that would require, wouldn't it, an inspector or somebody of a senior level to make a decision. I mean, we can't just blame a system. That's an individual that would have to say, Harry over there, who's black, and Jim over here, who's white, I'm going to sanction Harry, but not Jim, even though I think they, you know, they're both in similar territory. That's a human being's choice.
But how did that human being come to that choice? And I agree with you that there's an absolutely fair point that you're making. However, if the system didn't allow that, who makes those decisions? Who allows that to be perpetuated? And so therefore you have a promotion system which doesn't check. It doesn't check itself. If you've got 30, and I mean, we're kind of going off track, but for example, if you've got 30 white candidates that are always getting through, but 30 black candidates are not, but the system isn't picking that up and thinking, well, what is it about the 30 black candidates that didn't get through? What was the decision making? And by perpetuating that decision making, it's the system that's at fault.
What about this, Nusrit? And this often gets flagged. I've seen it in other areas as well, that in order to expand the look of, in this case, the Met, and to make sure that diversity is being achieved, many non-white people applying for jobs in the Met haven't had to meet quite the same criteria to get in. So many people have got in but not been quite as good. And therefore, once they're in, that's where the problems start, because they're not up to the job.
I don't believe that anybody has got through and they don't meet the standards, because vetting is vetting's where most of it fails. But if you would give me the exact figures and where you got that from to say that people have got in simply because they are one dynamic ethnic group and they didn't quite meet the standard, then I would actually like to have that broken down, because the Met does not allow people. What it does do...
Well, there's such a thing as... We know positive discrimination exists, is the point,
no,
right?
No, positive action exists. Positive discrimination is illegal.
Well, if you want to call it positive action, I mean, some might say, is that not the same thing? If you're employing somebody because of the colour of their skin or their gender...
No, because one's illegal. You cannot say
Well, yes, I mean, I know in the eyes of the law they are, but to many people, they go, well, that's the same thing. If you employ someone just to get more people in of colour or gender, then, or religion, then that's discrimination against other people.
Right, let me explain. I mean, and then there's a slight difference here. Positive action doesn't say you can get in because you're black. What it does do is it gives you a little bit more assistance. So it might be able to say, well, okay, we'll mentor you to get you to apply. But if you don't meet the standards, you don't get in. At that point, you don't get in, regardless of who you are, with ethnic background you are. And I think it's a very dangerous assumption to say and not know the difference between positive action, which stops at the point of selection, and positive discrimination, which is illegal under the Equalities Act. So, I mean, I think this whole review is wider because it's gone away from looking at individual racism to looking at the institution and saying to the Met, you've had over 30 years and we're back to the same thing. Casey review, which was 2 years ago, Angelini review, you know, and I can take you back without listing the whole, that's boring now. You know, 1981 was the Starman report. In the 90s, again, we had the McPherson report, which labelled it institutionally racist. We've come full circle. I think we need to now talk about what does change look like? How many more times are we going to sit here and discuss it?
Okay.
Quite frankly, it's getting quite boring now because it's the same pattern.
So
and this is what the review picks up. It picks up that it's perpetuated, it's rewarded, and we go round in circles.
So we are back where we began in many respects. Nusret, I've got to stop there. Thank you for your time. Nusret Mehtab, who is a former superintendent in the Met. Let's get a word from Festus Akinbosoye, former Police and Crime Commissioner. Festus, good to have you with us. What do you make broadly of what we've just been talking about there? We've come full circle. McPherson, we remember that happening, of course, after the Stephen Lawrence murder. Nusret essentially saying that we're not really in any better place.
Well, you know, the thing is that, you know, like she said, you know, we've had the Scarman report, we've had the McPherson report, we've had the Casey review of just 2 years ago. Personally, my concern is that taxpayers' money have been spent on yet another report that effectively comes to the same conclusion in a roundabout way. And ultimately, the best way to improve public confidence and trust in the Met is by the Metropolitan Police doing a much better job in cutting crime, in supporting victims, and in preventing harm, regardless whether they're black, white, or Asian, Christian, Muslim, or Jew. However, what I will say, though, Ian, is that wherever in our country where people are not being able to maximize their true potential and what they have to offer Britain overall, whether they're white, black, or they come from a working class background, a council estate, like I come from in East London, we have got to be willing to shed a light on that and fix it. Because we are poorer as a society if people are not being able to fulfill their true potential just because of who they are or where they are born. I don't think that's a fair thing to do in society.
But this idea that, and this is what this Shireen Daniels review has led to, and Nusret was essentially echoing that there isn't still systems in place that discriminate against, in this case, black officers. I'm not sure what it says about officers that are brown or mixed race or whatever the case is, but certainly black racism, the institutions work against those officers. Do you believe that?
Well, what the report shows is it mostly focuses on black people specifically, not brown skin or Asian people. I mean, I kind of don't like the kind of, you know.
I agree.
It's kind of it seems too semantic for me, but they're mostly talking about African and Caribbean people who are black, and so you've got to look at the data and what it shows. And what the data shows is that in the Met, for example, black officers and staff are nearly twice as likely to have complaints made against them compared to their white colleagues, even though they're disproportionately represented in the force compared to the population in London. But what's quite interesting, though, is I'll just refer you to a 2019 research by the National Police Chiefs Council, which looks more broadly nationwide, and they found that if you look at the complaints that are made against black people or Asian people by the wider public, there is no disparity at all about police officers and police staff.
Interesting.
But the disparity comes up when you look at internal complaints by other police officers about black colleagues. And one of the reasons they think there is that issue is because within policing, when a complaint is made about a black police officer or police staff, because the supervisors are afraid of being called racist, apparently, they automatically escalate this to professional standards because it's too hot to handle, I don't want to deal with it. Whereas for a white colleague, it would be dealt with informally.
Right. So that would perhaps explain that disproportionality.
it is one of the explanations being given. And of course, I have lots of friends who are police officers, both in the Met and other police forces. And you seem to see this happening. But look, overall, I think there is something to be done about the way that complaints are dealt with within policing. Too many are being taken to PSD. I mean, the Met, for example, the size of the PSD, Department for Professional Standards budget, has more than doubled in about in the last 5 or 10 years. And that can't be sustainable. Well, a lot of these complaints, these issues can be dealt with informally by sergeants and inspectors without going to gross misconduct so quickly.
That's an interesting interpretation of that. Festus, thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate that. Festus Akin Buseye, who is a former police and crime commissioner, who has a very different take to Nusrit's point before that. What I always find, and look, I know all these things are anecdotal. I'm a white bloke. I don't have that experience, and therefore that you have to put that out there to start with. And I'm not going to decry an individual who has their experience either. But I do meet a lot of coppers and speak to a lot of police officers. And I don't think I've ever met one in recent times, and the old kind of McPherson stuff predates my area of working in this world, but I don't know where all these mad racists are. I'm not disputing that there's not a proportion of people, and we've seen some of them on TV investigation shows get caught with secret. You know, I get that. Of course, you're going to have a proportion of people in any workplace, even if it is the police, who have ill intent for a variety of reasons. It might be a race-based issue, it could be a gender thing, sexism, homophobia. You know, I understand that. We all understand that. But broadly speaking, on the wider issue, if you read the headlines of some of these reports, you know, systematic, inevitable problems with institutional racism baked into the system, etc. I struggle a little bit with that, knowing how hard the police have. I mean, I would imagine the HR department at the Met is like a left-wing love-in. So you kind of wonder what the hell's going on. I don't think Eugene Terre-Blanche and his friends are running the show there. And I know I'm saying that anecdotally, and I'm not decrying anyone's experience. I wouldn't dare do that, of course not. But I do scratch my head a little. 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Plug in your microphone. Honestly, the production around here is lacking. Finn had one job. You had one job, Finn. We are back. Well, it's just gone 5-3, and we've got a brand new Voice of Doom. The last one went on for, what was it, Finn? 2 days? 2 days? Yeah, right. 2 days. This is brand new. Have a listen.
We emerged from the Cold War.
Who do you think that is? 87222 if you know. I think it's tricky. Say it every time and somebody still gets it. Here it is again.
We emerged from the Cold War.
If you think you know, 87222, and hopefully we'll get a right answer. We'll reveal all on the other side of the news. Here it is one more time.
We emerged from the Cold War.
Is it a stinker or is that doable? 87222. Right, let's go to Slovakia. Cliff is calling us from there. How you doing, Cliff?
Hi, Ian. I'm good, mate, thanks. Well,
Good.
Slightly raging, to be honest. Slightly raging.
Go on.
OK, your last caller, the ex-crime commissioner, made
Yes.
a great deal of sense to me, and he talked a great deal of truth about how things are working. So let's just give you a little bit of career provenance. So I was a policeman for 25 years, having been a soldier previously. It took me ages to get into the police.
Yeah.
Because they were going through that phase, well, do we still want ex-service people? Should we be looking for so-and-so and so-and-so? Anyway, I get in and I work my way up and I finish up as an acting inspector because I left the police before I was to be promoted. So let me just tell you something. I was a sergeant on a probation and development unit.
OK.
And we had students from all backgrounds, all ethnicities, and we were hard driven to make sure certain students were given extra help to be successful. Now, I'll let you make your mind up which students those were.
Right,
you want
because
me to
this
spell it
was a
out.
case, as I mentioned to a previous guest, about kind of ticking more boxes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what you had was a case of where they were failing, they were given extra time. So where a generic white guy, girl, from a sort of basic background, totally relevant education standards, would be, I'm sorry, it's probably not for you, thank you very much for trying, those people get extensions and they would be helped and helped. And to be honest, I know of one case where one has gone on to be a fairly senior officer in the Met.
So it does, in that respect, yeah. I mean, it kind of ties into the very conversation we just had. Listen, I've got to step in there, Cliff, for no other reason. We could talk for a lot longer in Slovakia because there's much more to be said on this. If you want to comment yourself, 0344 499 1000. One here says the ex-superintendent is talking cobblers as a PC in the Met for 30 years. I should know. Time and time again, this race-baiting nonsense comes up and the same faces come out to cheer it all on. Ethnic minorities are not disadvantaged in the Met, quite the opposite. Have a listen to the Voice of Doom. Who is this?
We emerged from the Cold War.
If you think you know, 87222. Let's get the news now at 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
A lot to get through in this last section. We are talking about Britain tearing itself apart as that poll reveals that 8 in 10 say the country is divided. Half think that culture is changing too fast and pride in Britain has slumped. Culture war fatigue is on the rise, it seems. Where has our national pride gone, if that is what you are sensing? We'll take more calls and comment on that in just a bit. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has jetted over, as you've been hearing, to COP30. He's down in Rio having a pina colada and a swift massage from Bernardo on the beach, preaching net zero. Well, Britain, according to some, is paying the price. He pledges that the UK is all in on green targets, but scepticism has grown. By the way, America and China haven't even turned up for this. Your response to that? And as we've been discussing, the Met faces another race row as internal reviews allege built-in racism. Commissioner Mark Rowley rejects institutional racism but says change is needed. And I thought some of the comments, our previous call, a long-standing retired cop now of many years, and that other one we read out from Dave, just doesn't recognise this. It's cobblers, he says, and that certainly seems to be a very commonly held view. So where is the problem that these initiatives or these surveys keep throwing up? Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. This from John, who's 73 years young, he says. Ian, your earlier caller, when implied he doesn't want to be here anymore, is so sad. Sad, but the thoughts of all us OAPs. I daily speak to many pensioners, all with the same thought. Why? Because we can all see that life as we know it has gone. And that's a really sad place. John, thank you for that, mate. That's a really desperate place that we've arrived in when people are going, I don't recognise the place anymore. I know that there's something that happens when you get older where, yeah, you might go, my time is now. Not at 73, you shouldn't be thinking that. Maybe 103, you might go, yeah, I think it's time I checked out. I get that. You're just fed up with just sitting around all day because your lack of movement. You're not about to go on holiday anytime soon or start climbing steps or jumping on rides at a theme park. I get that, but at 73 you shouldn't be thinking that. But there seem to be more and more people of that view. We'll continue to take calls on that as well. Let's move then to this story. This, of course, is Rachel Reeves has told the budget watchdog that the way to repair public finances is an increase in income tax. The 2025 budget looms. That should be Finn, I think, not 2026. There is one of those looming as well, isn't there? But certainly the one this year, I think, is looming quite nearer. Will the Chancellor change her mind about this pending tax rise? What do you think? Helen Thomas, CEO of Blonde Money, joins us. Nice to see you again, Helen. Good to have you with us. I mean, it's, will she, won't she kind of moment. The smart money, if you're going to go to the bookmakers, is that, yes, she will, in terms of tax rises.
Oh, absolutely, she will. Look, there is, as we know, a downgrade that the OBR have done, which means she's got to find more money. Don't forget, of course, that she's got to find more money from those welfare reforms she couldn't get through her party. That was about $5 billion. Then there's all the talk of getting rid of the two-child benefit cap, a bunch of other stuff, of course, that her party want. Look, when you add it all up, we're talking big numbers. We're talking 20, 30, 40 billion, and that's before we've seen exactly what the OBR has to say. So there's only one way to be sure that you will raise big sums, and you've got to move the big taxes. Yeah. And that's why she's in this mess, of course, because she promised not to. Yeah, indeed. And, there's all these other sort of smaller taxes. They're not small to individuals, and they all add up to, telephone number kind of figures. But broadly speaking, you have to cut to the chase on this, don't you? If you need to raise that kind of money, then the obvious place you are going to go is income tax. I mean, there's, we can tinker around with taxing airlines or, some other tax on getting rid of your grass at the local tip, but it's income tax, isn't it? It's income tax. Well, here's the thing. There's 29.5 million taxpayers, so it's a broad number of people. So, that if anyone can do the maths, as they say, and if you take that number of people and you adjust the numbers, you're going to get a big number at the end. Because here's the other thing. tax changes behaviour. You know, we've heard a lot about the Laffer curve recently. The man behind it seems to be everywhere at the moment, giving interviews.
That's right. People forget that fella's still around. People have talked about the Laffer curve since I've been alive. And suddenly, you know, this fella turned, oh, he's a real person. You know, yeah, there he is. Is it Arthur, I think, isn't it? Arthur Laffer. Yeah, Arthur Laffer. And there he is. He's out on the speaking circuit.
He is. And famously, the curve that he created, which is saying that there comes a point where you put up tax too much, you will not get more revenues in. You know, putting taxes at 95% doesn't get you any more money in. And Britain was at those high levels, of course, back in the day. Apparently, he drew it on a napkin, this famous curve. Wow. But I think it instinctively is something people understand, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely right. But is there a sweet point, though, which I suppose is what the Treasury tried to look for, where you could argue that, you know, there's also an inevitability. If you were looking at this from a Rachel Reeves perspective, you'd go, look, we need the money. There is a point when those who've got more can stomach it. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's the only place we're going to go. So we're going to whack on, I don't know, 5p onto income tax and go further so that we've then got wiggle room. We can actually start doing some other stuff as well.
Well, look, yes, of course, it's not just trying to fill in these numbers of those 30-40 billion pounds that to get that fiscal gap to be filled in. She really wants to make sure, well, goodness me, I can't believe I'm saying this, that she doesn't want to come back again. I mean, how many times has she been back again after saying she didn't want to?
Yeah.
But the thing of all of this is that they're all interlinking parts. Look, what happens if that we're at a point where, frankly, you've been discussing, people are feeling quite low at the moment. This tips a few people into staying at home a bit more, not going out. They certainly can't afford fish and chips on a Friday and all those sorts of things anymore. And then what happens is it all has a knock-on effect. And then you get people going into unemployment, then the benefit bill rises, then borrowing rises, then yields rise.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a complex being. So although she's trying to sort of do one spreadsheet, it's far, far more than that. And frankly, I think quite a lot of damage has already been done simply because of how long and drawn out this process has been. And goodness me, these leaks that we're getting are quite extraordinary for the detail of what we are to expect will happen on 26th of November.
In terms of cutting spending, now that's, you alluded to it at the beginning, they had a few ideas about the welfare department, and of course those backbenchers discombobulated at the mere idea. And of course this was never even about substantially cutting it. This was about cutting the increase in it, and that was enough to scare the living daylights out of the sort of more left-wing part of the Labour Party, who were very dominant. So it never really happened. But there's got to be a reality check here somewhere, isn't there, where somebody says, look, we are spending a lot of money, and we need to curtail that spending.
Well, I think that is becoming ever more the key argument politically now. And, you know, people watching this will have their own view of where they sit on that. But, you know, the government has gone from spending about 35% of GDP to 45% of GDP. And these are big numbers. And a bit like the Laffer curve, it gets to a point where if the government can't prop everything up, it just costs too much. It will get into a crisis. So you know, spending is certainly now the focus. I mean, I do think that Rachel Reeves's surprising statement she made this week was actually for Labour MPs, which was, I've got to do this. You didn't let me do anything on spending, which, as you say, wasn't even less spending. It was just a bit less in the rate of growth of spending.
Yes, yeah.
But here's the thing. There's about half of these Labour MPs are new, never been MPs before. I think for a lot of them, 14 years of Tory rule, which they paint as austerity, doing all this damage in their view, they cannot bring themselves to do anything on the spending front. It's not what they got into politics for.
Yeah.
But and that's you talk about this rebellion and the left of the Labour Party. It's not even really the left. I mean, we run the numbers. We do a lot of analysis on every single MP. We could see the breadth of opposition to those welfare reforms. It was in getting on for 100 MPs. It's not just sort of
it's maybe across the board. I guess there's something sort of intrinsic with, you know, when I say left-wing thinking, with Labour thinking, shall we say, that at the minute you mention welfare in close proximity to the word cut, people lose their mind.
There is, and then there are ways of doing it. Of course, the fact it was managed, it was rushed to try and meet the OBR. Famously, of course, Rachel Reeves loves the OBR. She's obsessed by it. She thinks that's why Liz Truss got defenestrated, was just because of the OBR. So that meant that they got in this real focus on, you know, how are you graded for your disabilities, and it got into such a horrible mess, rather than the big question of what do we do welfare for? Who should it go to? How do we manage this going forwards?
Listen, Helen, on that point, it's not going to be dull, and maybe we will speak on Budget Day as well. Helen Thomas, CEO of Blonde Money, with us on the programme. Thank you to her. There's going to be a tax rise, OK? Let's just get that out the way. There's going to be a tax rise. If there's not going to be a tax rise, then I may well eat my abacus, because where else is this dosh going to come from? Find out more full coverage on the 28th, of course, which is the Rachel Reeves Budget of Joy, as it's now going to be titled. 26th, I apologise. Straight after PMQs, you'll hear it here on Talk, and the full analysis, and specifically what it means for you. Now, normally on a budget day or post-budget, when you ask that question, what does it mean for you? You know, well, no one's digested the flipping budget at that point. It's normally the next day you get the full headlines. However, I think with this one, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 quite obvious, glaring headlines that jump straight out on this one. And we'll bring you all that detail and debate it as well, coming up here on Talk. Let's go back to your calls. The question we began with, where has our national pride gone? According to one survey, it's out the flipping window. James, what are you making of this? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
I think that basically started in the 70s when they had the long march of the left through the education system.
Okay.
That stopped us from being proud of the likes of us being perhaps one of the most inventive islands in the world.
Yeah.
With anything from the internet to vaccines, vaccinations, we had, we had a colonial past and a capitalist past, but those have brought more people out of poverty than any other
100%
philosophy going. And yet you're supposed to be ashamed. You know, if you're white, you're the worst of the worst. You need to wear the hair shirt over your colonial past. And basically from dawn to dusk, you are supposed to be ashamed to be British. And that's what they've done.
Yeah, and it's kind of... and it's not even just the left, really, because, I mean, the Conservatives have sort of happily carried on this sort of curious, unnecessary battle as well.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I'd just like to bring up an interesting fact, if you don't mind me saying so. It's regarding the whole climate change nonsense. You think things are scary now. If the Greens get in coalition with Labour and Jeremy Corbyn's, Marxist Party, the Greens have stated, and you can look this up in their manifesto, that they want no fossil fuel by 2040 of any sort.
Yep.
And abolish nuclear.
Yes.
So what do you use for the base load? Fairy dust and pixies?
That's exactly what you use. The use of pixies is much underrated, James. Did you not know that?
Sorry about
There's like
that.
thousands of them ready to go, and they're currently idle in a mine somewhere. They also want to, of course, make it perfectly legal to buy heroin, but illegal to rent out your house. So that gives you a kind of idea of where these people's thinking is.
And no borders either. And they're polling higher than Labour. So all I can think of is that there are, shall we say, voting for the hard of thinking or the thinking impaired.
Well, they're going to be royally split, aren't they? If you've got the Greens and this fella, I don't know why this Zach Polanski guy has kind of, his star has risen so quickly, because I don't think he's that good, to be honest. I don't think he looks great on camera, and that sadly is part of the new way of doing politics. You've got to have some kind of presence. I mean, he says some powerful stuff. He's probably better to listen to than to watch if you're of that kind of politics. But he seems to have galvanised the Green Party. And, of course, this tipping point happens, right, where suddenly things that seemed impossible begin to be possible. And the Greens are rising, as you rightly said, they're ahead of Labour in some polls. If you put the whole thing together, all the left-wing parties, it's going to be them against reform, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the right has to unite. The downside is reform can't be can't take the Tory wets, the Liberals, this, that, the other. The Liberal Democrats will fold like a Lord Alley cheap suit.
Does he have any cheap suits, though, Ali? Let's be honest. I take your point. I thought they're all about 5k a piece minimum.
Yeah, I think he'd give cheap suits to the Liberals, really.
That's probably true. Listen, James, lovely to talk. Great conversation. James in Staffordshire. It's going to be fascinating where the whole kind of sort of the division of politics goes. Do you put all... Because you're never going to get Corbyn's lot in with Starmer's lot when it comes to Level. That's not going to happen. But you might get Corbyn's lot in with the Green lot. But is there enough of them to significantly dent Labour? Well, it wouldn't beat Labour. Keir Starmer, it wouldn't beat them. I don't think it would. But it would divide them. That's the whole point, isn't it? And similarly on the right, you've got the Conservatives and Reform. But I think Reform are currently carrying all the... It doesn't matter whether you love them or hate them. I think they are carrying all the cards on this one at the moment. Before we continue, let's just do the voice of doom. Remember, just before the news, we played you a brand new mystery voice. No one was going to get this thing, right? Have a listen.
We emerged from the Cold War.
Who is that? Some of the guesses: John Reid, Michael Barrymore, get in the bin, Alex Salmon, George Robertson, Tom Nairn, Indira Gandhi, I don't think so, George Reid, Peter Carwell, Sadiq Khan, Robin Cook. None of those are correct. However, good Lord, can you Adam and Eve it? Yes, we did get a winner. Ashton correctly guessed. The answer is, I don't know how you did it, Ashton. I mean, that's amazing observation. Either that or AI is working overtime on your phone. Des Brown is the right answer. Former cabinet minister in Gordon Brown's cabinet. He was a defence minister, certainly for a couple of years there as well. You tend to forget that. I remember seeing him in Parliament, walking with a kind of a security detail, because if you do that job, you get like the armed boys with you. I remember thinking, Des Brown, that old lefty, walking through the place like God knows who, with armed protection. But that was the right answer. Well done, Ashton. I think is it the only person, Finn, that got it? One person did it solo-handed, no one else. Brand new one on Monday. Our lines are open. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Linda says, and we're just talking here about kind of that sense of, you know, what kind of country are we living in? Do we like it? Where's the national pride bit? All of that. And we had a message earlier on from somebody who's 73 and said there's that sense among some people their age group that, you know, I don't want to be here anymore. Linda's in Worcestershire and says, 73 is nothing. As a woman of 55, I struggle every day to see the point of carrying on. I'm scared about what's happening to my country. Politics is in the sewer. MPs are intent on destroying the UK, especially in England. I'm scared to be out alone or in company, and I'm sick of commentators saying it's all a conspiracy. I see it. I hear it. That old soldier was right. That was the little clip we played a little earlier. We'll play that again in just a second, actually. Can we line that up, Finn, to just give that another run? And one here from M who says, the veterans' words, which would be echoed by all that fought for the country and gave their lives needlessly during conflicts, brings home how bad our government has been. To let our once great country slide into the depths it's reached. Shameful. I very much doubt if they could see into the future. If they could have done, perhaps they wouldn't have bothered. And this was a little clip we played earlier from essentially a 100-year-old veteran called Alec Penstone. He fought in World War II. He was speaking on Good Morning Britain this morning, and obviously Remembrance Sunday happens this weekend. And of course, when he fought all those years ago, they obviously thought they were fighting for something better. How about it? He's 100 years old, remember this guy, fought for his life and his country. Have a listen to what he said today.
What does Remembrance Sunday mean for you? What is your message?
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
I mean, wow, that is heartbreaking, it's profound, it's disturbing. And it wasn't worth the result for what it is now. Let's go to Matt in Cheshire for a comment on this issue of pride. Matt, what are you thinking?
Hi, very good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
My pride in the British people has never been higher, and that's because they're having to fight against the thing I'm least proud of and utterly repulsed by. That's the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the judiciary, the police. We should all be ashamed of them. I mean, most of them are actual traitors, and I don't mean the police on the street. I mean the upper echelons of the police. What links have people from Eritrea, from Albania, from Romania got with Britain? So when we're letting people pour into Britain who have absolutely no respect or links to Britain at all, is it any wonder that people have no pride in Britain? And even the countries that we used to have links with, like Pakistan and Jamaica, they've been talked into sneering and being obnoxious as well by the Labour Party. So what links have we got with anybody apart from maybe India? who are still pretty much respectful to us and us to them. So it's time for all these people to go.
It doesn't come when they work out the kind of criteria, you know, for somebody to settle here. What you've just said, which is a very sensible, frankly crucial element to the process of deciding, that doesn't enter into it. That's not on the form anywhere. You know, there's nowhere that it says, well, you know, is this person likely to assimilate? Is this person likely to contribute? That's not there, and that's the kind of missing bit, really.
But they don't care about that, Ian. We're just a drop-in centre for people, for health, for benefits. They don't care about anything to do with that. They don't care about the percentage of the white indigenous population perishing.
But is that about, I mean, if you get, I don't know, an NHS surgeon that comes from India or another country, you know, generally speaking, that surgeon will assimilate with their family. They might have their own religion, but that's almost it, really. You know, I bumped into these guys on many occasions over the years. You know, they are part of the fabric of the country. So some people can do it. Is it just professionals? Is that what we're talking about here?
No, it's the first generation were appreciative. Their children were appreciative. And they're still here. They think like me and you and everybody else.
Yeah.
The West Indians, the Indians, they think the Poles who are left here, they think the same. There's people here who don't belong here, and we should spend the next 20 years deporting people until we get some sort of semblance of what the hell we're doing.
Yeah, it's all, the whole thing is kind of splintered all over the place. I was looking at that guy, you know, that fella that got released from prison, the sex offender. And he's now been recapped. This bloke should have been deported 5 years ago, right? I'm sure you've seen the story, Matt. And he wasn't deported. I'm looking at the imagery now, actually. And there he is in the street being handcuffed by the Met Police. And he's, like, shouting away and talking. It's like, what are you even doing here, mate? Why are you here? Firstly, you're a sex pest, which is disturbing in itself. But your kind of attitude to the country that has given you previously, before you started doing horrendous things sexually to other people, your attitude to the country is awful. There's no sense of, oh, I'm really grateful for this place. It's given me a home. None.
No, because Labour have made that possible. It started with Blair. It started with Eastern European immigration and not the Poles. They got all the blame for it. They got all the hassle, the Hungarians, and they were the only decent sort of people that came here. Everyone else that came here in that way was an absolute liability, like the people the Conservatives let in.
Yeah.
So we need to just get them all out and destroy the political class.
Well, it's that whole thing, isn't it, of wanting, you know, a country that has an immigration policy, and no one disagrees with an immigration policy. You're not arguing it. I'm not arguing against it, but we want the right people and the best people, and I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think it makes you a mad right-winger to set that as a bit of basic criteria to somebody who's going to come in. But it doesn't get, it's not written down anywhere. They just go, right, we need loads of cheap labour. It doesn't matter where you come from. In you come, guys. Boris Johnson and others playing that game. And that's where it's all gone wrong. And politicians will go, well, you can't do that. You can't. There's no mechanism to work all of that out. What do you know? Then they start saying, well, do a citizen test, as if that's going to, you know, a box-ticking exercise. Listen, Matt, we have to stop for time. Great points that you've raised, though. Brilliant stuff. 0344 499 1000. Just before we go to a break, let me remind you, Monday, the 1st of December, the talkTV app is on the move. All your favourite shows and podcasts will continue, however, on the Talk app. So just look up Talk app, and that will replace your talkTV app. If your talkTV app is still there, just delete the thing and keep with the Talk app. So if you're watching or listening on talkTV right now on the app, you'll need to download the Talk app from your App Store or Google Play. Do it now. I did it the other day. It took about half a second. Dead simple. Lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 4. Peter Cardwell is here at 4 this afternoon on Drive. Loads going on. And we should mention this. The former Duke of York, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has been summoned to speak in front of US Congress regarding the Epstein files. A letter was sent to the now former Prince from the Democratic members of the House of the Oversight Committee who are investigating claims against him. As chaos continues among the royal family, Prince William has refused to comment on the scandal when asked on CNN. Let's speak with Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Afternoon to you, Rupert. I'm going to take a little guess here that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is going to say a big fat no to this invite, if he responds at all.
Well, this is the difficulty for him, and it is interesting that they came out of the traps pretty quickly once the letters patent was signed and sort of formally sort of getting rid of his title. And then you see this stark letter that goes, "Dear Mr. Mountbatten Windsor, how the mighty have fallen." When you suddenly see that, no formality, just straight, just as if it was a letter coming to Mr. Collins or Mr. Bell. I mean, he suddenly now is sort of brought down to our level. But I think the way they've gone at it is it's almost like they feel now that as he's a private citizen, they can ask the question. Remember, he's at all stages strenuously denied every allegation that has been thrown at him, despite the fact that the Queen paid off Virginia Giuffre to the sum, we say, somewhere in the region of $12 million. And will they get an answer out of him? Till November the 20th is when he is expected to reply one way or another. But you feel that there's quite a lot of political pressure, not necessarily on Andrew, but on the sort of American establishment, going right up to the very top, because they said they would release everything around the Epstein files.
Yeah.
But President Trump hasn't. And maybe this is a way of trying to get someone to offer themselves as a not I would say stalking horse, but if you know what I mean, to someone they can get to say something. But Andrew's in he protests his innocence. Is there a chance for him to do so? I don't know. This is the problem for him. He's, in the eyes of everyone else, he's guilty in the court of public opinion. And I can tell you, having gone to an event last Saturday at a book festival where Andrew Lanny was speaking, I mean, the sellout crowd, you wouldn't have heard anyone supporting him. Okay, it was probably on terra firma in terms of the book, but it does give an indication. And I have yet to talk to anybody who offers him even the sort of merest of sympathy. And this is the problem for him.
Yeah.
And what does he do now? And the American political system has said, right, we want you. Is he the low-hanging fruit? Is he, as I say, just someone who's easy to have a go at because he won't reply? But I don't know. That is why I am absolutely convinced the king got rid of his title, because he knew more was coming when he sort of questioned his brother and said, is this the end? And maybe even Andrew said, I don't know. And then the king may have thought, right, this is it, end of. I've got to basically say, you've got to play your own furrow now. We've done all we can. This is your show.
100%. And of course, there's two schools of thought on this, Rupert, isn't there? One is that if you were Andrew, you'd be thinking, right, OK, this is going to be a great opportunity to actually go there, tell it like it is, say, yes, I did know him. OK, I kept in touch a little longer than I should have done. That's it. Nothing else to see here. Went to a couple of parties, didn't do anything with anybody underage, nothing to see in that respect. Didn't see anybody that was, saw one or two famous actors maybe there. They weren't doing anything either. This is a fuss about nothing. Thank you very much. He could do that. But, of course, we know that even when he's been trained pre-interview, I'm thinking of Newsnight here, where he thought he gave an Oscar-winning performance and was, grinning like the proverbial Cheshire cat when Mateless was done, turned out to be the greatest PR disaster almost in recent royal history when it comes to that. So he perhaps is not as convincing as he once thought he was himself.
Well, the trouble is, his arrogance has got him into these difficult situations, because there were people at times said, just don't do it. You saw yesterday William when Christian Amarpour asked sort of a question, it wasn't completely loaded, but it was enough to indicate where she was heading with the changes within the royal family, what she was getting at. And he immediately had a wonderful sort of played a curveball and went and turned it round on the audience and said, that's the change I'm looking at. It was quite astute of him, because so he avoids any comment to get something that could come back to haunt him down the road. So a good curveball from Prince William. But for Andrew, has he got the the wherewithal to actually get himself out of this very deep predicament of his own choosing, no less? And he has created this problem for his family, and that's why they are doing their level best to distance themselves from him and saying, this is your show, and you, as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, are going to have to sort this out yourself.
Yeah. That was the most expensive party anyone ever went to, the day that he went over to Epstein's house. I know he denies anything happened with Virginia Giuffre and all the rest. Regardless of that, that was the most expensive day of his life.
And maybe one or two others, but the point is he has created this problem. He thought he could brazen his way out of this, and unfortunately he's not. And, you know, I think I actually saw you the other day, and I mentioned, I felt that where are his friends? Where's that support network of his loyal lieutenants who might put their head above the parapet and say, we're with you here, Andrew. There just doesn't seem to be that level of support from him from any circles. They're trying to distance themselves from him, and this is the problem for him. He appears to be very friendless, and you know, it may be that even his daughters could be at a wit's end, because it must be quite distressing for them reading endless things about their father. But it wouldn't just be them, it would be any other family when you've got these kind of allegations swimming around about your father, and including in this 100%. Case his mother's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But occasionally they haven't helped themselves by going and doing things in the Middle East and maybe looking as if they too have got the benefit. But again, that's a sort of, they have got to navigate their way forward for themselves as a family. But for Andrew, this latest move by the American Congress to do this suggests that they want someone finally to say what they know, who is a big enough name to do that. But is Andrew going to do it? We'll wait and see. November the 20th is deadline day for Andrew.
There it is. Listen, Rupert, thank you very much indeed, as ever. Rupert Bell Talks royal correspondent. I thought what Rupert said, and he alluded to it, I bumped into Rupert here the other day and we had this very conversation. Where are all his friends? You might think there'd be one sort of old lord or one former military old duffer that would say, do you know, I've known this bloke for years, he's a fine bloke, this doesn't sound like the Andrew I know, he's a really decent chap, and, you know, who knows what goes on at a party, but the idea that this is sort of habitual behaviour is a nonsense. He's a top chap. No one has said that. No one has come out in that kind of respect and made those comments, and you'd think by now one of them would. I think he's the completely unacceptable face of, you know, the whole notion and concept of a royal family is deeply controversial for obvious reasons, and you wouldn't invent it tomorrow, but it has kind of served us well, and there is a sort of thread of patriotism that has been enduring mostly despite the hurdles over the years, and the late Queen, of course, was absolutely pitch perfect in just carrying out that role to its nth degree, just brilliant at that. But the stereotype of the kind of rich and privileged prince that doesn't have to go to work, that's him, right? That's Andrew. He is that guy. He's the guy that really does believe this was a birthright, that he is better than the rest of us, that somehow, just by dint of his lineage and his titles, he could surmount the most outrageous and disturbing claims against him. And the Newsnight interview was just, you know, when he finished the interview with Maitlis and his face was beaming, and then he took her on a tour of the palace, he was so sure that he'd nailed this one and it was in the bag, you know. Any doubt about his guilt? No, all sorted. Brilliant. I didn't stumble the words. Job done. And in half a second, that interview was analysed and ripped apart and made him look 1,000 times worse than he did before he opened his royal gob. Funny times. Let's go back to your calls. This is Sean in Northampton. Afternoon to you, Sean. What have you got for us?
And good afternoon, Ian. Good
Hiya.
show as usual.
Thank you.
I'm listening to all of you presenters today, and if you're asking why have we lost national pride?
Yeah.
Well, let's start looking at the leadership that's now gone from this country. Now, the Queen's gone, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on to the King. He wants to change his title from leader of the Church of England to leader of the faith. All we ever see on TV is the King going to mosques. So he's fell into the usual trap. Like you've said this afternoon many times, the Labour Party just depend on the Muslim vote for their in their seats in certain areas, and they're quite happy to throw the rest of us to the dogs. But the main thing, I think, where it's changed now is we've got generations coming through now that have been to university or been to comprehensive schools, and all the while they're being told about the great left. I've been on to my grandson's head teacher today and last week about this. It's so pro-left wing in the education world. So these kids are coming out of school, and to be honest, not even knowing what the left wing is or what the right wing is. It's just being told that if you've got to follow this kind of, this path, otherwise you're just a bad person. So in answer to your question, in a summary on that, basically all our leadership is gone. Look at the Archbishop of Canterbury. It's supposed to be the bastion of the Christian faith. Now, I know we're not a Christian country as far as attendance, but culturally we're a Christian country. Now, I've never heard any Archbishop of Canterbury get on telly and start pushing that. They've banned all that kind of education from school.
Yep.
They've taken away the morning assembly services, what had a Christian value to it. And I'm not particularly Christian, but I still think that's fed an awfully big part into the culture of the Christian culture.
Sure.
And I think that's where it's all gone wrong. And it's like some of your callers have said earlier, what's happened at the moment is taken a long, long time. I think the country is now coming to life because people like me, normal working class people like me, we've been seriously affected on a day-by-day basis by what really is a load of idiots in Parliament. I mean, I'm sure you watched that David Lammy thing the other day. I mean, I wouldn't allow that in a youth club.
I know, but how entertaining it would be. Listen, great call.
It would. I've never seen a politician who's so easy to wind up. I mean, I'd love to spend 10 minutes if I could kill him.
It's a beauty. It's a beauty, metaphorically speaking, of course. Sean, thank you very much indeed for that. Sean in Northampton, the divisions in Britain, where does it start? Where does it end? How do we how do we begin the process of sorting it out? Becca in Norfolk says, when I was, this is reference COP20, what's it, what year are we in? COP 30, isn't it? There's the 30th COP they've done. When I was in primary school in the 90s, we were told about the ozone layer, blah, blah, blah. Polar bears would be one of the animals that no longer exists. 2025, polar caps have grown. And there are too many polar bears. I don't believe the rubbish on this, says Becca. Many people kind of echo in that very point. Phil is in Hertfordshire. What's happening to our pride, Phil? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah,
Hiya.
I wish I had something to be proud of, Ian. I still feel proud as a person born in this country. However, when you look at us growing up, we had things that we could be proud of. We had role models. We had our Queen. We had the royals. And you'd look at them and think, yeah, we're part of that. But what's happened, I feel, we are being abused. As a people, Ian, we are actually suffering abuse. And we are being abused with an ideology that looks like a parasite is sucking the blood out of us. And what's being taken away from us is our pride. And I want to just pick up on what your previous caller just said about what they're teaching them kids in school. When they go to school, what are they being taught about this country that they're proud of? Yeah. They're not being told anything, nothing. They're not being told nothing about our history. And obviously, the British Empire is coming under sort of some scrutiny now. Fair enough, I understand that. But that did shape the part of how the world is today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and without that, the world wouldn't probably be what it is like today. Who knows what it'd be like? We can't guess. We have to take as what it is. That's how it is. And I really do feel that there are a lot of people out there that are waking up and realising this. But we are, Ian, we're being abused. We're being abused by the people that we put trust in to serve us, look after us, and they're not. They're weak people, self-indulged, egotistic people that are just out there for their own gain for whatever reason, but they're definitely not looking after the people. And that is what stops me from feeling as proud as I'd like to.
Wow. That's, fascinating and disturbing, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that, but none of us should be in this particular place. Phil, thank you very much. Have a cracking weekend, mate. Thank you. Phil in Hertfordshire. Joan's in Sunderland on this same issue. Joan, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Well, I think this country is in a bad state. We're like a ship without a rudder.
Mm-hmm.
We have a man who likes the title of Prime Minister and its trappings, but he spends more time abroad than in this country. Actually, I think he's got as much flying hours in as a commercial pilot. And his next trip will be when our Rich drops the bombshell on the 26th of November. Now, he'll have to find a country to go to avoid the flak. So somewhere in the world he'll find somewhere where there's an envelope being opened, because he'll turn up for that. As for the pride in our country, we have been brainwashed. I'm 85-year-old. I don't recognise this country anymore. I didn't give the thought police permission to tell me what to think and to what I say. If you say anything that people don't agree with, you're a far-right thug, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist. And we have let them get away with it. We have actually let the tail wag the dog.
Yeah.
Schools, the rubbish our young people are being taught. No wonder they've got mental health issues. All this gender rubbish, pronouns, and now they're not even being taught history, our history. They can have Islamic history.
Well, you have to decolonise the curriculum, don't you, Joan? In case there's any stuff in there that that might be offensive to people. I mean, we've sort of reached this bonkers fever pitch place. They tell us it's getting better. I think it's probably getting worse in lots of areas under Labour. Listen, Joan, I've got to run because we've hit the clock. Love talking to you, Joan. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to the calls. Paul is in Newport. What have you got for us, Paul? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to speak to you.
You too.
Just listening to Joan, and then before that, the poor old chap who's 100 and said,
was it worth it?
Was never worth it. Never worth it.
Yeah.
One of the things I think has fundamentally changed, okay, not too many moons ago, you had to be in your 70s or 80s before you go along and go, oh, I can remember when all this was fields, or I can remember when bread was only 50p a loaf. Now, you're walking along with a 25-year-old going, yeah, we used to play football on there, but the school hasn't got any ground anymore. 50p, well, that was last week, because the prices are going up so blooming fast.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a sort of 60, 70, 80-year-olds. There are people in their 30s that are going, what the blooming hell's going on?
What is going on?
Happening?
Yeah.
So and I think so. If we say that, just pulling numbers out there, if we say there was 1 million people, who are over 80, and we used to call them the miserable old so-and-sos, because they're all this one. Now you've got all the people from 30. You've now got 25 million people going, what the blooming hell happened? I mean, I live in a little village, and I look at the construction all around me.
Yeah.
I used to walk my dog for miles. If I walk 100 yards, I'm in someone's back garden now.
Times have changed. And they will continue to do so. Listen, Paul, I have to run because the news is about to come on, but you do get the final word, and thank you, Paul. Great to have you on. We've got so much to talk about, and of course it's not just us on this programme here this afternoon that has got a lot to chat about. Peter Cardwell's here as well.
Hello, Ian. How are you doing? You well?
He is absolutely rammed with sizzling delights.
Indeed. We're talking about, with Jack Eltham, the political editor of The Sun, about what is happening with our country, whether there's actually a future for it. I mean, there is, of course, but pride has plummeted, as you've been talking about. Also, the 100-year-old World War II veteran who has shocked people by saying that the nation is in a sorry state, echoing major new poll in Starmer's Britain as well. David Lammy still told to stop digging as well when he says he didn't have all the facts about ducking MPs' questions. We'll talk about that as well, and a big story, and a big evolving story in the BBC. Loads of discussions in the Telegraph and elsewhere about the fact that there are so many criticisms about how they've covered Gaza, about how they've covered trans issues. For example, Michael Prescott, former Sunday Times journalist, has written that dossier there. Angela Rayner, speaking about writing, she's thinking about writing her memoir as well. I think she should be on Strictly, perhaps. And the net zero consensus is gone. We'll talk about the sport. We'll talk about whether Tony Blair should go to the Middle East to run it. Many of the Palestinians don't think so. Well, he should go somewhere, maybe to The Hague. But no,
how many jobs can that man have?
That's
I mean,
a very good point.
Running
nearly as many as George Osborne.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's all going on there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Osborne apparently something to do with this new takeover at ITV as well.
Really?
I think he's part of. Yeah, I don't think he's. Okay. I think he's part of the bank that is all part of the.
Right. Yes.